Hello everyone, this is Wandering Tati. In this video, we will discuss some of the most common cognitive biases. These biases are common patterns of thinking that can affect our judgments and decision making. Much like the logical fallacies that we learned about in my other video, we all experience these at some point. But it is valuable to learn about them and thus be less likely to be influenced by them. Let's explore some of the most prevalent cognitive biases that influence our everyday lives. The first one on our list for today is confirmation bias. This bias refers to our tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore or downplay contradictory evidence. It can lead to a distorted perception of reality and hinder one's ability to find the truth. In this glorious era of our wonderful internet, you can find evidence for any belief you want. Is Bigfoot real? Are alien abductions true? Is Nickelback the best band in the history of music? You can find sources for all of those. Let's think about it with the following example from the book Bad Arguments: 100 of the Most Important Fallacies in Western Philosophy. Suppose I said I was thinking of a pattern and challenge you to figure out what pattern I was thinking of. You give me 3 numbers and I'll tell you whether they fit the pattern. You say 1, 3, 5. I say yes, that fits the pattern I'm thinking of. So what do we think the pattern is? Ascending odd numbers, right? So instinctively, what kind of sequence would you give me next to test that hypothesis? 3 more ascending odd numbers, right? Something like 3, 5, 7. But that is exactly what you should not do. Instead, you should try to disprove your theory. Maybe it's just numbers ascending by 2. Maybe it's just any odd numbers in any order. Maybe it is ascending odd prime numbers. Give me sequences like 2, 4, 6, 5, 3, 1, and 11, 13, 17. If any of these also fit, you'll know your first hypothesis was false, and you will be one step closer to the truth. The actual pattern I had in mind was any 3 ascending numbers. Notice that if all you tried to do was confirm your ascending odd number theory, you would give me sequences that fit the pattern all day, and yet never make any progress in figuring out the pattern. Confirmation bias is ingrained. We have to learn to fight against it. If our aim is having true beliefs, we should actually try to prove what we believe is wrong. There is a cool video by Veritasium in which he actually tests this by interviewing different people. Much like scientists do, you must first present enough evidence and good logical reasons for your belief. And you should always genuinely try to prove yourself wrong, and invite everyone else to do the same. If something is the truth, evidence will eventually lead us to it, and it will be able to withstand any amount of scrutiny. But if sufficient evidence is provided against your belief, you should not deny the evidence, but change your belief instead. Next we have the curse of knowledge. Once you understand something, you presume it to be obvious to everyone. Things make sense once they do, so it can be hard to remember why they didn't. We build complex networks of understanding and forget how intricate the path to our available knowledge really is. This bias is closely related to the hindsight bias, wherein you will tend to believe that an event was predictable all along once it has occurred. We have difficulty reconstructing our own prior mental states of confusion and ignorance once we have clear knowledge. The term curse of knowledge was coined by the economists Kammerer, Lowenstein, and Weber, who wrote a famous article about this topic in the Journal of Political Economy. The focus of their article was that, despite the common belief, better informed agents cannot accurately anticipate the judgment of less informed agents in economic settings. There was an interesting experiment conducted in 1990 by Stanford graduate student Elizabeth Newton that illustrates the curse of knowledge with the results of a simple task. A group of subjects, known as tappers, were asked to tap out well-known songs with their fingers, while another group, the listeners, tried to guess the titles. Before the experiment, the tappers were asked to predict how many of the tapped songs would be recognized by the listeners. And they predicted 50%. 120 songs were tapped out for the experiment. And guess what? Listeners guessed only 3 of the songs correctly. The tappers were just so familiar with what they were tapping that they assumed the listeners would easily recognize the tune. For example, can you guess what this song is? If you do, pause the video and let me know in the comments. Next we have anchoring, a heuristic that was first identified by Tversky and Kahneman in 1974. Here, the first thing you judge influences your judgment on all that follows. Human minds are associative in nature, so the order in which we receive information helps determine the course of our judgments and perceptions. Living in this ruthless capitalist society, you have for sure experienced attempts to use this one in someone else's favor. Setting a price at $9.99, which creates the anchor at 9 instead of 10, making the product appear cheaper than it actually is. By listing subscription options from most expensive to least expensive, people will perceive the less expensive options as a bargain. Used car salesmen put highly priced cars out on the lot in order to make their slightly more affordable cars out in the back appear to be great deals. Restaurant menus are curated to make prices appear affordable. For example, the lowest priced dishes are listed first to give a sense that the restaurant is affordable. Moving on, let's talk about the availability heuristic. This bias occurs when we rely heavily on immediate examples or information that comes readily to mind when making judgments or decisions, instead of considering a broader range of evidence. One common example is this one. Plane crashes can make people afraid of flying. However, the likelihood of dying in a car accident is far higher than dying as a passenger on an airplane. But precisely due to its infrequency, plane crashes may appear in the news and thus they seem more recent and vivid. Another example. Let's say a manager needs to promote someone to a leadership position. They've narrowed down the pool to 2 candidates. Both candidates have strong leadership skills. They've also both made some similar mistakes in the past. The first candidate once forgot to send an important email before going on vacation, which resulted in a project falling behind. The second candidate made a very similar mistake while working directly for the hiring manager. The manager remembers the second candidate's mistake most vividly. This is because they weren't directly affected by the first candidate's mistake. It's easier for them to retrieve this information. Because of the availability heuristic, this manager gives more weight to the second candidate's mistake. Although both candidates previously made mistakes that led to consequences of the same gravity, the manager decides to promote the first candidate. So what can we do to fight this bias? We could, for instance, try to avoid making impulse decisions or judgments. When you're about to make a decision on the fly, take a moment to think about it. What's informing your decision? Where's your judgment of the situation coming from? It's also important to seek out information sources that don't necessarily line up with your personal beliefs. This one is difficult, I know, but we should make a conscious effort to seek out other points of view. Also, recent events can skew our perception of reality. We should always take a look at long-term trends and patterns because they might tell a different story. And finally, instead of relying on people close to you to understand the probability of something, consider overall statistics. Just because you know several people who are left-handed doesn't mean that the majority of the population is also left-handed. No matter how popular and outgoing you are, the people in your life are always going to be a small sample. Next is the Dunning-Kruger effect. No, not this Kruger, but just as scary. It basically sums up to this: the more you know, the less confident you're likely to be. Because experts know just how much they don't know, they tend to underestimate their ability. But it's easy to be overconfident when you have only a simple idea of how things are. Try not to mistake the cautiousness of experts as lack of understanding, nor to give much credence to lay people who appear confident but have only superficial knowledge. Psychologists Dunning and Kruger discovered and studied this effect. For instance, in the abstract of their paper from 1999 titled "Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments," they say, "People tend to hold overly favorable views of their abilities in many social and intellectual domains. The authors suggest that this overestimation occurs in part because people who are unskilled in these domains suffer a dual burden. Not only do these people reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the metacognitive ability to realize it." Across 4 studies, the authors found that participants scoring in the bottom quartile on tests of humor, grammar, and logic grossly overestimated their test performance and ability. Several analyses linked this miscalibration to deficits in metacognitive skill, or the capacity to distinguish accuracy from error, paradoxically improving the skills of the participants and thus increasing their metacognitive competence helped them recognize the limitations of their abilities. So, how to avoid it? Basically, improving metacognition. Metacognitive ability refers to our capacity to monitor and understand our own cognitive processes. It involves being aware of our thoughts, judgments, and learning strategies. Question yourself before making any decisions. Consider people's feedback carefully so you can know about the areas that need improvement and how to improve. Ask yourself whether you know about every aspect of this situation or not, and this way you can stop yourself from overestimating your abilities. So that was the last bias I had planned for today. There are numerous others worth exploring, so if you enjoyed this video and would like me to cover some of the others, please let me know in the comments. Understanding cognitive biases is essential for developing critical thinking skills and making more informed decisions. By recognizing them in ourselves and others, we can strive for greater objectivity and rationality in our thoughts and actions. I hope you found the video entertaining and informative. If you did, please remember to like, share and subscribe to support the channel. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Until next time!